The Zherik Empire ruled half the galaxy for over 300 years. It had never lost a war. They'd crushed worlds, enslaved species, and destroyed anyone who resisted. Their technology was advanced. Ships were massive, and their soldiers were heartless. Fear was not in their dictionary. They believed they were born to rule the stars. No species had ever made them afraid. Not even close. Their leader, High Commander Zherik, sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered enemies. He believed fear was for the weak. His people were trained from childhood to be emotionless. Mercy was considered a disease. The Zherik didn't talk during battles they destroyed. They didn't negotiate. They ordered, and most of the galaxy obeyed. When the Zherik arrived on a new planet, they sent a warning first. One simple message: surrender or vanish. Most civilizations surrendered before the first blast. Some tried to fight, but it only lasted hours. The Zherik always won. They believed they were gods among animals. One day, Zherik scouts found a small blue planet on the edge of a forgotten system. The planet was called Earth. Their sensors showed human life, simple creatures, basic technology, small weapons, and tiny cities. Commander Zherik laughed. Another rock to crush, he said. He sent a standard message to the humans: surrender, or your planet will burn. But this time, the reply was different. A human voice responded through the galaxy-wide broadcast. The voice was calm, but powerful. It said just 2 words: try us. The room fell silent. Zherik officers looked at each other in confusion. Was it a joke? A bluff? Who were these creatures to speak like that to the Zherik Empire? Zherik's eyes narrowed. Send a scout fleet, he ordered. I want them wiped before sunset. 5 warships left the Zherik capital that day. Each one carried thousands of soldiers, advanced weapons, and orbit breaker bombs. They reached Earth in 2 days. Their scanners detected military bases, power grids, and satellites, still primitive compared to Zherik's standards. The fleet commander, General Razer, smiled. They'll fall before they even see us. He said he gave the attack order, but something strange happened. One of the Zherik ships lost contact, then another, and another. Within 10 minutes, all 5 warships vanished. No distress signals, no warnings, just silence. The Empire was stunned. This had never happened before. Ships don't just disappear, not Zherik ships. Zherik stood slowly from his throne. His voice turned cold. Find out what happened. Now, a new fleet was prepared, larger than the last, but something had shifted. Some of the soldiers looked nervous. Whispers spread across the barracks. What happened to the first fleet? Is Earth cursed? Did the humans use forbidden tech? The Zherik Empire never feared anyone, but for the first time they had no answers, and fear begins when questions go unanswered. A council was called in the Empire's core. Advisors, generals, and scientists gathered to review the data. Nothing made sense. The Earth was supposed to be weak, but now it had become a mystery, a challenge, and maybe a threat. High Commander Zherik clenched his fist. He stared at the stars through his massive warship's window. He spoke slowly. They think they can make us afraid. They think we will run. Then let them see our full power. He ordered a full invasion fleet, 10,000 ships, millions of soldiers, and every weapon in the Empire's arsenal. He looked at the Earth's location again. This time he didn't laugh, because deep in his heart, a small whisper spoke for. The first time it said, what if we're not the gods anymore? General Razer stood inside his command ship, the Blood Howler, the largest ship in the scout fleet. Armed with plasma spears and gravity bombs, around him floated for more Zherik warships, each one capable of wiping out a continent. Earth was in sight now, a blue and green ball hanging quietly in space. It looked peaceful, weak, unaware of the storm coming. The general gave a crooked smile. Let's begin, he said. He launched a probe, sleek and fast, to scan the planet's defenses. But just as it entered the upper atmosphere, it vanished. No signal, no explosion, no damage, just gone. The ship's tech officer frowned. That's not possible, she whispered. They sent another probe, same result. And then, something even stranger happened. The Zherik fleet's long-range systems picked up a human signal. Not a distress call, not a scream for help, just music, a soft, old Earth song. It's full of violins and distant thunder. No words, no message, just the strange sound playing through all Zherik comes. It made no sense, but the soldiers felt uneasy then. Came the flash. One of the Zherik warships, the Bone Serpent, exploded mid-space. No impact detected, no warning, no trace of enemy weapons. Just fire and silence. Panic spread through the other ships. What was that? Is this some human magic? General Razer yelled, "Pull back! Engage shields. Find the source." But it was too late. One by one, ships began losing power. Lights flickered, systems shut down. Weapons refused to fire. It felt like something was crawling through their circuits, like the ships themselves were being haunted. Some soldiers screamed, claiming they saw shadows moving inside the walls. Others heard whispers in a language they couldn't understand, on the blood howler. The AI core cracked open with a burst of sparks. A single human voice came through. It wasn't threatening. Was calm, even polite. "We warned you," it said. "You wanted to know what happens when humans are cornered? Now you'll learn." General Razer ordered emergency warp jump anywhere. Just away, but their engines were already shut down. The ship trembled, systems freezing one by one. The Zherik soldiers prepared for battle, but nothing came. No human ships, no attacks, just silence. And that soft violin music until the windows darkened. Outside, a black shape moved long, sharp, and silent. Not a ship, not a creature, but something in between. It flew past the Zherik fleet like a ghost through fire. And wherever it passed, Zherik systems died. One soldier whispered, "It's not technology, it's something else." Another screamed, "We shouldn't be here." Then, everything went black. When Zherik High Command tried to contact the fleet, they received nothing. No signal, no recording, no trace. It was as if the entire group had never existed. Hours later, one broken ship was found drifting near. Jupiter, its hull was ripped open from the inside. Every soldier inside was gone. Only one message was carved into the metal walls, scratched by something sharp. For words, "Do not test us." When Commander Zirkin read the report, his hands tightened. He slammed the datapad on the ground. The fear was still small, but it was there now. Something about humans didn't follow logic, they didn't act. Like prey, they acted like something ancient. He turned to his war council and said coldly, "Prepare the main fleet. I don't care what they are, if they want a war. They'll get one, but deep in the stars, hidden from the eyes of empires." Earth was already watching, listening, and preparing for what was coming, because humans knew this was only the beginning. And they had plans, very human plans. Plans the Zherik could never understand, until it was too late. The Zherik were confused. They had lost ships without seeing the enemy. They had heard music instead of war cries. And now, they were angry. But beneath that anger, something darker was growing doubt. Commander Zirkin stood in the strategy chamber of the war vessel Rathspic. Around him, Zherik generals hissed and argued. "This is trickery," one shouted. "No species fights like this," another growled. But the AI screens didn't light. 20 ships lost, 0 human casualties. The Zherik had expected brute force. They got whispers, shadows, and sudden silence. No honor, no direct battle only. Clever traps and invisible hands. And that's when they realized humans don't fight to win battles. They fight to break minds, far away on Earth, in an underground control room. Captain Elias Monroe watched Zherik's footage from their destroyed fleet. He sat quietly as data scrolled across his screen. A group of engineers waited behind him, holding their breath. Monroe finally spoke. "They're not afraid of weapons," he said. "You're afraid of what they don't understand." He stood and walked to the table. Pulled out a small black device, no buttons, no lights, just smooth metal. "This," he said, "is fear." The engineers looked at each other, unsure. "This device didn't kill any Zherik ships," Monroe added. "It just made them feel human for a second. A moment of confusion, a hint of panic, a spark of doubt. And that was enough." The room went quiet. because everyone knew this wasn't war. It was psychology, and humans were very, very good at it back on Rathspic. Commander Zherik received an incoming transmission. It wasn't encrypted, it came from Earth, open, casual, as if it were a simple invitation. He opened it, expecting a threat, but it was just a video. A single human soldier, armed, looking straight into the camera. And he said only one sentence. "We studied your fear before you even found us." The video ended. No coordinates, no challenge, just that line. It wasn't loud, but it struck deep. Because Zherik scientists had confirmed something terrifying. Humans had been listening to Zherik broadcasts for years, silently observing from their hidden satellites. They knew Zherik formations, ship designs, chain of command of an individual warlord's names, but the Zherik had known nothing about Earth. Until days ago, it wasn't strength that gave humans power, it was information. And that was the human tactic. Let the enemy come, learn everything about them. Then strike where it hurts most, inside their minds. In the next encounter, Zherik drop pods landed. In a desert, no resistance, they walked into a ghost town. Not a single human in sight, but then something beeped beneath the sand. The ground opened like a trapdoor, swallowing an entire squad of elite Zherik soldiers. Above, drones shaped like birds followed the rest. Silently recording their confusion, one soldier shot at the sky out of panic. The bullets bounced off invisible shielding. The humans were watching, laughing, maybe. Zherik pride cracked under pressure. Some soldiers retreated. A commander screamed, "Zherik, do not run!" But he was alone when he said it. Back in space, Emperor Kraxos stared at the growing list of failures. He clenched his hands, metallic gloves scraping against the armrest. "What are they?" he whispered. A quiet voice behind him answered. "Their bones break easier than ours," said his advisor. "Their weapons are not stronger. But they study, they plan, and worse, they adapt." Kraxos stood slowly. "Then we will show them real fear." He growled, "Call every sector, prepare the death fleet." But even he, the great emperor, felt something deep in his chest. It was tight, cold, and unfamiliar. For the first time in his rule, his heartbeat was not steady. And he realized something strange. He was already thinking like a human, reacting instead of commanding, worrying instead of crushing, and that, more than any weapon, was the beginning of the Zherik's downfall. The galaxy watched in silence. Everyone had heard the whispers about Earth. About humans, some called it a joke. Others called it madness. But after the Ghost Fleet incident, no one was laughing anymore. Entire Zherik ships had vanished. Commanders returned broken, silent, or not at all. The Zherik were preparing their biggest fleet yet. The Death Spiral. Thousands of ships, war beasts, mindbreakers, and elite dread units. It was meant to crush Earth in one clean sweep. No survivors, no warnings, no mercy, but deep inside the heart of human command. Earth wasn't panicking. It was smiling. Captain Elias Monroe stood at a giant table made of old war steel. His eyes scanned the holographic models of incoming Zherik fleet lines. "Let them come," he whispered. "We've been planning for this day since we saw their first shadow." Around him stood hackers, soldiers, rogue engineers, ex-criminals, and scientists united. Not because they wanted war, but because they knew something the Zherik didn't understand. Survival isn't about strength, it's about refusing to die. The Zherik fleet moved like a storm, blotting out the stars as they approached Titan's moon base. Commander Zherik stood at the head of the armada. "This is it," he growled. "Crush them. Destroy the myth of humanity." But when the Zherik fleet arrived, Earth was ready. No massive army, no glowing space stations. Just one ship parked calmly in orbit, a human dreadnought called the Hammer, old, ugly, patched with mismatched armor. The Zherik laughed when they saw it, but they didn't laugh. For long, the Hammer powered up, and the stars behind it shifted. Not because of a weapon, but because the ship pulled gravity. It used a new form of energy, dark core bending. Something even Zherik science had never dared to create within seconds. 3 Zherik destroyers were ripped from formation and folded like paper. Zherik ships fired, but their plasma beams disappeared. The hammer absorbed them, studied them, and fired them back twice as strong. Panic spread. Zherik ships collided in confusion, trying to retreat, but behind them, Earth's stealth mines activated, each one mimicking dead space until it exploded into magnetic storms, trapping the retreating fleet in a silent graveyard. On the surface of Titan's moon, human ground teams activated towers. They weren't weapons in the normal sense. They were truth beacons devices that broadcast Zherik war crimes across the galaxy in real time. Every species who had ever feared the Zherik now watched them bleed. Broadcasts went viral, even to neutral planets. Everyone saw the great Zherik empire being torn down, not with fire, but with truth and humiliation, back in the Zherik throne room. Emperor Kraxos watched the live feed in silence, the hammer-shaped ship, the collapsing fleet. The screams of his generals, his claws twitched. "This cannot be real," he whispered, but it was. And then came the message. Direct transmission it. Traceable. Unfiltered, unstoppable. A human woman appeared on every Zherik screen. She wore no armor, just a jacket and a calm face. "My name is Dr. Morgan Hale," she said. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a politician. I'm a schoolteacher." That sentence hit the Zherik harder than any missile, she continued. "You've attacked our planet. It's taken our people, and we still didn't break. We aren't monsters, but we are human, and that means we'll protect what's ours, with minds, with machines. And with the part of us you fear most, our will." The feed cut out. Kraxos stared at the blank screen, and finally, he felt it. Real fear, not just for his empire, but for what was coming next. Because if humans had done all this without an empire, what would they become once they built one? In the darkness of space, the few remaining Zherik ships limped away. Earth didn't chase them. It didn't need to. The message was clear. The war had turned, and now the Zherik were the ones being hunted. The galaxy had seen wars, thousands of them, but none like this, because now humans were no longer defending. They were coming, and this time they were angry, on a remote mining planet called Veltron 6. The Zherik outpost was quiet, no alarms. No signs of trouble until the sky turned red. The sun dimmed on it because of weather. But because something was blocking it, a single human ship hovered above. It wasn't big, but it was fast, too fast. The Zherik guards barely had time to blink before their entire radar array exploded in silence. A voice echoed through every speaker, every frequency. "You didn't knock when you came to Earth, so we didn't either." Then came the drop pods, hundreds of them, sleek, black, silent. They didn't crash. They landed like whispers. Human soldiers stepped out. But they didn't wear flashy armor. They wore fear-proof tech, body heat cloaking, silent weapons. "Neural comes." One soldier raised his hand and pointed at the Zherik base. The entire building lifted off its foundation and collapsed inward. No missiles, no bullets, just gravitic folding. Science the Zherik hadn't even discovered yet. The few survivors tried to call for backup. But no signal escaped the atmosphere. Earth's satellites had already surrounded the planet, turning it into a cage. Elsewhere, in the void passage near Sector 12, a Zherik war fleet approached a human listening post. They thought it would be easy. The post was unguarded. But as they came close, space itself bent, not visually, but physically. Their ships began to tilt, turn, fold like they were inside a black ocean. Suddenly, they weren't in the same place anymore. Their coordinates made no sense. Their engines screamed in protest. And then, a human message flashed on their screens. "Don't chase ghosts in our house." And the fleet vanished, just like the first scouts once had back on Earth. Captain Elias Monroe stood at the edge of a massive underground command structure. Beside him was Dr. Morgan Hale, now wearing military-grade armor, laced with neural gel. "What's our directive?" she asked calmly. Monroe looked out over the holographic map. Red dots marked every Zherik-controlled system. "Simple," he said. "Everywhere they ever stepped. We'll step louder. No more warnings." Humanity was no longer just defending. Earth, they were hunting. Zherik, Emperor Kraxos, called an emergency meeting with his high command. His voice was hoarse. "Who are these people?" he demanded. They had no empire, no colonies, no standing fleet, just one planet. One of his advisors answered quietly, "They were united by survival, not by conquest." They were underestimated. They were cornered. Kraxos slammed his fist on the table. "This is not how war works." But even as he shouted, more reports arrived, outposts lost, fleets missing, loyal species switching sides, and the worst news of all, human tactics were spreading. Other species once too afraid to resist were now using Earth's methods. Small, sabotage teams, psychological warfare, smart traps, viral truths. The Zherik no longer just feared humans, they feared what humans were teaching others, back in the human war room. A young soldier received a signal from deep space. It was a strange audiophile Zherik language, full of static and desperation. She played it. It was a Zherik commander's voice. "Please, we didn't know. We didn't understand what Earth was. We were told you were animals, weak, soft. But now we know you are not the prey. You are the storm." And so, the war truly began not in numbers, not in weapons, but in fear, in the change of the galaxy's heartbeat. Where once the Zherik name made planets bow, now a whisper of human made even the bravest. Commanders rethink invasion because this wasn't just war anymore, this was correction. And humanity had just begun to write the next chapter, one system at a time, one reckoning at a time, until no one would ever forget why you never corner a human, why you never ever start a war with Earth. The Zherik were falling, one planet at a time. And Earth hadn't even revealed its full strength, but deep inside the Arctic core, buried. Under a frozen mountain, there was something Earth had kept hidden even from its own allies. A project so secret that only 4 people in the entire human command knew its full name. It was never listed in files, never spoken out loud, only known by a code name. Project Black Echo. General Monroe stood in the core chamber, surrounded by ice-coated steel walls. Beside him stood Dr. Morgan Hale, no longer a teacher. Now she wore Black Ops command colors. She placed her palm on the scanner and whispered, "Let's wake the Echo." The chamber unlocked, hissing with steam and cold light. Inside was no super weapon, no giant cannon, just a small pod about the size of a coffin, floating in liquid light. "What is it?" a young officer asked. Dr. Hale didn't smile. "It's not a bomb," she said. "It's a scream, far across the galaxy." The Zherik Empire made one last move. They gathered their greatest army, bioforged titans, cyber beasts, rage injectors, and war priests, all loaded into the Dreadmother. The largest living warship ever created, half organic, half machine, fueled by captured suns. It was heading straight for Earth's defense line. They didn't expect resistance anymore. They expected annihilation, but Earth sent no fleet, no battleships, only one signal. At first the Zherik ignored it, but then the Dreadmother's systems began bleeding data. Cameras showed things that weren't real. Faces of the dead AI minds screamed before shutting off. The war priests clawed at their own armor, whispering, "Make it stop." The sound was rising subtle, slow, like a breath turning into a howl. And then it screamed, not from speakers, not from space, but inside every Zherik mind. Sound perfectly engineered from brainwave data, built from the Zherik's own fear responses. It bypassed tech and hit their nervous systems directly. No armor could block it. No logic could resist it. One commander begged, "What is this?" His second-in-command wept blood. It's our own voice," she cried, reflected back at us. Its war beasts turned on each other. The AI core cracked, trying to translate a sound that didn't follow logic. Some Zherik ships began self-destructing, not out of strategy but madness, back on Earth. Monroe and Hale watched from the Arctic. Command Tower, the Dread Mother, had gone completely dark. No escape pods, no distress signals, just one frozen shape. Adrift in the cold black sea of stars, a soldier asked, "Was it really necessary?" Monroe didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They built weapons from pain. We built one from silence. Now they understand what it means to truly be alone." Word of black echo spread like wildfire, not through meta, but through whispers. Zherik survivors refused to sleep. They heard it in their dreams. They screamed in their sleep, and some never woke up. Entire planets under Zherik rule rebelled, just from hearing the stories. Other species, once quiet and neutral, began requesting alliances with Earth. Not because of strength, but because of what humanity had shown. Mercy is a choice. But fear is a language. In the ruins of Zherik High Command, Emperor Kraxos stood alone, his armor stripped, his advisors gone, and still. The sound lingered. In his mind, a sound that wasn't real but felt more real than his empire ever had. He whispered to himself, "Maybe they were never prey. Maybe. We were, but Earth did not celebrate. There were no parades, no music." Because the people of Earth knew one thing. They had built something they could never unmake, and it had listened. It had learned, and somewhere, very deep beneath the ice, black echo pulsed once more. Waiting, because in war, the final weapon is never fire. It's the memory of what was unleashed, and the galaxy now remembered. The galaxy had changed. It didn't happen in a moment, or through a grand battle. It happened in silence, in fear, in the space between thoughts where nightmares are born, and it all began. With humans in the years after the Dread Mother vanished, the Zherik Empire was no longer an empire. It was a scattered echo. Broken fleets drifted in deep space. Their commanders silent, their warlords missing. Their systems dark, planets once painted red with Zherik flags now burned them. Rebellions spread like fire, because every race remembered Earth's message. We don't start wars, but we finish them.
Ow.
No one saw Earth's fleets anymore, because they didn't need to be seen. They were like the shadow under your bed.
Ow, yay.
The sound outside your door at night. The feeling that something is watching you. And it's already inside, in a forgotten sector. A young alien child asked her father, "Are the Zherik still the scariest monsters?" The father looked down and shook his head slowly. "No, child," he whispered now. "We tell stories. About humans, Emperor Kraxos was never found. But it said he left a final message carved into his old war throne. It's not in Zherik script, but in human language. 3 words. We were wrong. The throne is still there, rusting in an empty hall. No guards, no worshippers, no songs, only silence. Because no one dares sit on it. Not out of respect. But out of fear, back on Earth, humanity didn't celebrate. They rebuilt. They mourned. They remembered Captain Elias Monroe, retired quietly in the mountains. He never spoke of the war again, but at night, he still checked the stars, not because he feared Zherik retaliation, but because he knew the truth. The real threat isn't who controls the galaxy, it's who understands it. And humans had proved one terrifying fact, that they didn't need gods, or empires, or ancient bloodlines to become legends. They only needed a reason. A line that couldn't be crossed, and someone foolish enough to cross it. In the deepest chamber under Earth's defense core, Black Echo sat still, surrounded by 6 silent guards who never spoke. They didn't need to, because Echo no longer screamed. It listened, waiting, breathing, and every once in a while, humming a soft tune, the same violin song that once haunted the Zherik. Some said humanity had become too dangerous. Others said they had become the balance, but no one, not even the bravest warrior from the farthest star, ever said they wanted war with Earth, because now, across every system, in every dark alley, battle school and command post, a new fear lived, a quiet one, a powerful one, a human one. And no matter how far you ran or how loud you screamed, that fear would follow. Because Earth remembers, and now the galaxy does too.